The cargo ship Terran Wanderer moved slowly through the dark space between two alien worlds. Its metal hull was old and scratched from many trips across the galaxy. The ship carried supplies from Earth colonies back to the homeworlds. It was not a beautiful ship, but it was strong. Captain Sarah Chun sat in her command chair on the bridge. She was a small woman with short black hair and tired eyes. She had been flying cargo ships for 15 years. Her crew of 12 humans worked quietly around her. They all knew their jobs well. The ship's walls were covered with warning signs. The signs were written in 17 different alien languages. Some said, "Human vessel approach with extreme caution." Others said, "Warning, contains death world." Species. The biggest sign said, "Danger, Terran crew aboard." These signs were not there to make humans look tough. The Galactic Commerce Treaty made all human ships put up these warnings. This happened after something bad occurred at Proxima Station 3 years ago. The galaxy learned that humans were different from other species. They learned that humans could be very dangerous when they had to be. Most alien species in the galaxy came from safe worlds. Their planets had gentle weather and few dangerous animals. They evolved to be peaceful traders and thinkers. But humans came from Earth, which other species called a death world. Earth had killer storms, poisonous creatures, and disasters that could wipe out entire cities. Humans had to become tough just to survive. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb worked at his station, checking the ship's systems. He was a big man with strong hands from years of fixing things in dangerous places. Before he joined the crew, he worked underwater fixing oil rigs in Earth's deepest oceans. Dr. Lisa Park sat at the medical station, reading reports on her computer. She was the ship's doctor and had short blonde hair and pale skin. She used to work in Antarctica, Earth's coldest place, where the temperature could kill a person in minutes. She knew how to keep people alive when everything went wrong. Communications Officer Yuki Tanaka monitored the radio signals from nearby space. She was young with dark eyes and moved in the strange way of people who grew up in space stations. She was born on Titan, one of Saturn's moons, where the air was poison and the cold could freeze. Human blood solid. The other crew members worked at their stations or rested in their rooms. They came from all over Earth and its colonies. Some had been soldiers, others had been miners, farmers, or factory workers. All of them had learned to survive in places that would kill most alien species in hours. Sarah looked at the star charts on her main screen. They were passing through neutral space between the Catherian Empire and the Zephian Republic. This was usually a safe route for cargo ships. Both alien governments allowed peaceful trade ships to pass through without trouble. "Captain," Yuki said from her station, "I'm picking up multiple ships on long-range sensors. They're moving fast toward our position." Sarah turned to look at the young woman. "Can you identify them?" Yuki worked at her controls for a moment. Her face became serious. "They're Catherian ships, Captain. Military configuration." "It looks like a raiding fleet." The other crew members on the bridge became quiet. Everyone knew about Catherian raiders. They were the most feared pirates in this part of the galaxy. The Catherians were big, strong aliens who came from a world with gravity 3 times stronger than Earth's. They had natural armor on their skin and claws that could cut through metal. For hundreds of years, they had attacked weaker species and taken what they wanted. "How many ships?" Sarah asked. 12 vessels, Yuki replied. 1 large cruiser and 11 smaller attack ships. Marcus looked up from his engineering station. "Captain, should I start the emergency protocols?" Sarah thought for a moment. She had dealt with pirates before, but never Catherians. Most pirates would run away when they saw the warning signs on human ships. The smart ones knew that attacking humans always ended badly for the attackers. "Not yet," she said. "Let's see what they want first." The main view screen flickered and showed the space ahead of them. Sarah could see the dark shapes of the Catherian ships getting closer. The largest ship was huge, bigger than 3 human destroyers put together. It had weapon ports along its sides and armor plating that looked like the scales of some giant space creature. "Incoming transmission," Yuki announced. "Put it on the main screen," Sarah ordered. The view screen changed to show the inside of the Catherian command ship. A massive alien figure filled the screen. He was over 8 feet tall with dark green skin that looked like armor plating. His eyes were yellow and cold. Sharp teeth showed when he spoke. This was War Prime Zexler, leader of this raiding fleet. "Small human ship," Zexler said in accented but clear English. "You will stop your engines and prepare to surrender your cargo. Resist and we will destroy you." Sarah stood up from her command chair. She looked calm, but her crew could see the anger in her eyes. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Terran cargo vessel Wanderer. We are traveling through neutral space under the protection of the Galactic Commerce Treaty. You have no legal right to stop us," Zexler laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that showed his sharp teeth. "Legal rights? I am War Prime of the 7th Catherian Fleet. I take what I want from weak species like yours. Look at you, small soft creature. What can you possibly do against warriors like us?" "Have you read the warning signs on our ship?" Sarah asked. Zexler looked at something off-screen, probably the images of Sarah's ship his sensors were sending him. He laughed again. "Warning signs? These are jokes, yes? You try to scare us with words on your hull?" Sarah's voice became very quiet and very cold. "Those signs are not jokes. They are there to protect you from us. This is your final warning. Move away from our ship and continue on your course. We are not your enemy, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." The Catherian leader's yellow eyes narrowed. "You dare threaten me? A small human from a weak species threatens the War Prime of the Catherian 7th Fleet?" He turned to speak to someone off-screen. "Target their engines. Disable their ship, but do not destroy it completely. I want to see these humans beg before I sell them as slaves." Sarah looked around her bridge at her crew. They all nodded at her. They knew what was coming. They had all seen the warnings ignored before. "Zexler," Sarah said, looking directly at the alien commander. "In about 10 minutes, you are going to wish you had listened to those warning signs." The transmission ended. The view screen showed the Catherian ships moving into attack formation. Their weapon systems began to charge up, creating bright blue glows along their hulls. "All hands, this is the captain," Sarah announced over the ship's communication system. "We are about to be attacked by Catherian raiders. They have ignored our warnings and chosen to treat us as prey. All crew members report to emergency stations. Activate Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was something all human ships carried, but hoped never to use. It was designed for one purpose: to turn a peaceful cargo ship into something much more dangerous. Marcus began shutting down non-essential systems and rerouting power to defensive measures. "Captain, the emergency systems are coming online. Helen is standing by." Helen was the ship's artificial intelligence system. The name stood for Hardened Emergency Life Extension Network. She was designed to keep humans alive in conditions that would kill any other known species. Dr. Park left her medical station and headed for the emergency medical bay deeper in the ship. She knew there would be wounded crew members soon, and she had to be ready. I continued monitoring the enemy ships while also sending out a special signal on frequencies only human ships could detect. It was an emergency beacon that would tell any humans in nearby systems what was happening. "Catherian ships are powering weapons," Yuki reported. "They'll be in firing range in 30 seconds. Sarah sat back down in her command chair and strapped herself in. "All crew, secure for combat. Remember your training." "Remember who we are?" The first Catherian ship fired. Bright energy beams shot across space toward the human cargo ship. The weapons hit the Wanderer's shields and hull, causing the whole ship to shake. Lights flickered on the bridge. "Hull damage on decks 3 and 4, Marcus reported. "Shields are holding, but they won't last long under this kind of attack." More Catherian ships opened fire. The human ship shook again and again as the enemy weapons found their target. But the Wanderer was built tough. Its hull was designed to handle the crushing pressure of deep ocean trenches and the radiation storms around gas giant planets. It could take more punishment than most alien ships. "They're moving to board us," Yuki announced. "I count 4 boarding." Shuttles launching from the main cruiser. Sarah nodded. This was what she expected. Cytherians liked to capture their prey alive when possible. Living slaves were worth more than dead bodies. "Let them come," Sarah said quietly. "Helen, activate. Death World Survival Mode." "Acknowledged, Captain," the AI replied in a calm female voice. "Switching to emergency life support. Artificial gravity will shut down in 60 seconds. All crew members should secure themselves." The lights on the bridge dimmed to a red emergency glow. The air became thinner as the life support system switched to minimal power. The temperature began to drop. "Captain," Marcus said, "the Cytherians will find these conditions very difficult. Their species evolved on a high-gravity world with thick atmosphere. They can't survive long in low-oxygen, zero-gravity environments." "I know," Sarah replied. "That's the point." The ship shuddered as the Cytherian boarding shuttles attached themselves to the hull. Sarah could hear the sound of cutting tools as the aliens began breaking through the airlock doors. "All crew members," Sarah announced, "we have hostile boarders. Remember, they are bigger and stronger than us, but this is our ship. We know every corridor, every hiding place, every system. Make them pay for every step they take." The artificial gravity shut off. Everything not tied down began to float in the air. The human crew members moved easily in the zero gravity. They had all trained for this, but the Cytherians would find it much harder to fight without gravity to help them. "Contact in Airlock 7, came a voice over the communication system. It was Security Chief Anton Volkov, a big man from Russia who had learned to hunt in the frozen forests of Siberia. "Cytherians are cutting through the inner door." "Let them in, Anton," Sarah said. "Then show them why we put warning signs on our ships." The hunt was about to begin. The Cytherians thought they were the predators, but they were about to learn that humans had evolved to be the most dangerous hunters in the galaxy. They had ignored the warning signs, and now they would pay the price for that mistake. The metal door of Airlock 7 exploded inward. Pieces of hot steel flew through the corridor as the Cytherian cutting tools finished their work. Thick smoke filled the air, and emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls. 4 Cytherian warriors pushed through the opening. They were huge creatures, each one over 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor that looked like green metal plates. Their yellow eyes glowed in the dim red light of the emergency systems. Sharp claws extended from their hands, and their teeth were like rows of knives, but something was wrong. The first Cytherian warrior stumbled as he entered the ship. Without gravity to pull him down, he floated helplessly in the air. His heavy armor, designed for a world with 3 times Earth's gravity, now worked against him. He waved his arms and legs, trying to find something solid to push against. "What is this?" The warrior growled in his own language. "Why do we float like dead things?" Security Chief Anton Volkov watched from a hidden position in the ceiling access panel above them. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of hunting in dangerous places. He moved silently through the ship's maintenance passages, places too small for the large Cytherian warriors to follow. Anton waited until all 4 aliens had entered the corridor. Then he quietly closed the access panel behind him and moved to a different position. He knew this ship better than anyone except the captain. Every pipe, every wire, every hidden space was familiar to him. The Cytherians tried to move down the corridor, but they kept bumping into the walls and ceiling. Their claws scratched against the metal as they tried to pull themselves forward. They were strong, but strength meant nothing when they couldn't control their movement. "This is some kind of trap," one of the warriors said. "The small humans have removed the gravity somehow." "Impossible," replied their leader, a scarred veteran named Krestok. "Only military ships have that technology. This is just a cargo vessel, but it was not impossible. Human ships were built differently than alien vessels. They had to be ready for any kind of emergency." Earth was a dangerous world, and humans who traveled in space knew that death could come at any moment. Every human ship was designed to keep its crew alive no matter what happened. The Catherians finally reached the end of the corridor. They found a door marked with human writing that none of them could read. It said engineering authorized personnel only. They used their claws to try to force it open. Marcus Webb waited on the other side of that door. The chief engineer had spent years working in places where one mistake meant death. He had fixed broken equipment while hanging from cables over bottomless ocean trenches. He had repaired hull breaches while space tried to suck him out into the void. A few alien warriors did not scare him. Marcus had shut down most of the ship's systems, but he had left some things running. The air recycling system was one of them, but he had made some changes to it. Instead of clean air, it was now pumping a mixture of gases from the cargo hold into the ship's corridors. The Catherians broke through the engineering door and floated into the room. They immediately began coughing. The air was filled with industrial chemicals that humans could breathe for a short time, but which burned Catherian lungs like acid. "Poison air?" Krestok gasped. "The humans are trying to kill us with bad air." Marcus smiled from his hiding place behind a large machine. The chemicals were not really poisonous to Catherians, but they were very unpleasant. More importantly, they covered up human scent. The aliens would not be able to smell where the humans were hiding on the bridge. Captain Sarah Chun watched the security cameras that showed her the Catherian boarding parties. 3 more groups had entered the ship through different airlocks. All of them were having the same problems with the zero gravity and the changed atmosphere. "Status report," she said quietly into her communication device. "Engineering section." "Secure," Marcus reported. 4 hostiles contained and neutralized. "Medical bay clear," came Dr. Park's voice. "I've sealed the doors and activated the biological containment protocols." "Cargo holds are mine," said Maria Santos, the ship's cook. She was a small woman from Brazil who had learned to hunt jaguars. "In the Amazon rainforest. Let them come and try to find me." Sarah nodded. Her crew was doing exactly what they had trained for. Each person had taken responsibility for defending a different part of the ship. They were not trying to fight the Catherians directly. Instead, they were using the ship itself as a weapon. On the main Catherian cruiser, War Prime Zexter watched his warriors struggling inside the human ship. His sensors showed that many of his soldiers were moving very slowly or not moving at all. Some seemed to be lost in the corridors. "What is happening in there?" he demanded of his second-in-command. "The humans have changed the environment inside their ship," the officer replied. "No gravity, poisoned air, and strange temperatures. Our warriors are having difficulty operating." Zexter growled in anger. "They are just humans. Small, weak creatures from a soft world. How can they resist us?" But Earth was not a soft world. It was one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy, filled with killer storms, poisonous animals, and disasters that could wipe out entire cities. Humans had evolved to survive in conditions that would kill most other species. They had learned to adapt to any situation. Inside the ship, the Catherian warriors were learning this lesson the hard way. The group that had entered through Cargo Bay 2 found themselves in complete darkness. Maria Santos had shut off all the lights and was moving through the maze of supply containers like a ghost. She was small enough to hide in spaces the large aliens could not see. She knew which containers held food and which held industrial equipment. She had grown up hunting in a jungle where every shadow could hide death, and these metal corridors were much easier than the Amazon rainforest. The first Catherian warrior never saw her coming. Maria dropped from above, using a piece of metal pipe to strike the alien in the head. The warrior's armor protected him from serious injury, but the blow was enough to knock him unconscious. His body floated helplessly in the zero gravity. "Jorek is down," one of the other warriors called out. "Where are these humans hiding?" Maria was already gone, moving through a ventilation shaft to a new position. She left behind only the unconscious warrior and the smell of fear. Dr. Lisa Park was having her own battle in the medical section. 2 Catherian warriors had found their way to the ship's hospital, probably looking for human crew members to capture. They did not expect to find a woman who had spent 3 years working in Antarctica, Earth's most hostile continent. The medical bay was now kept at a temperature of -20 degrees Celsius. For humans, this was cold but survivable with the right clothing. For Cytherians, who came from a hot world, it was like being trapped in a freezer. Their movements became slow and clumsy as the cold affected their alien biology. Dr. Park moved easily through the frozen medical bay. She had special clothing that kept her warm, and she knew exactly where everything was located. The Cytherians stumbled through the room, their breath making clouds in the cold air. "Where is the human doctor?" one of them demanded. "Show yourself, coward." "I'm right here," Dr. Park said calmly. She was standing behind them, holding a medical laser that was normally used for surgery. At close range, it could cut through Cytherian armor. The aliens turned around, but the cold had made them too slow. The laser beam struck one warrior in the chest, burning through his armor and dropping him to the floor. The second warrior tried to attack, but his claws could not grip the icy surfaces. He slipped and fell, hitting his head on a medical table. Dr. Park quickly used medical restraints to tie him up before he could wake up. Communications Officer Yuki Tanaka was defending the bridge area with Captain Chun. They had sealed all the doors and were monitoring the ship's systems. Yuki had been born on Titan, where the air was poison and the cold could freeze human blood. She understood better than anyone how to survive in a hostile environment. "Captain," Yuki said, "I'm detecting more Cytherian ships moving toward our position. It looks like they're calling for reinforcements." Sarah looked at the sensor display. "How many? 6 more ships, smaller than the main cruiser but still armed? They'll be here in 20 minutes. Sarah nodded. She had expected this. The Cytherians were not used to having their raids go wrong. They would bring more warriors to try to overwhelm the human defenders, but Sarah had a plan for that too. She activated her emergency communication system and began broadcasting on a special frequency that only human ships used. It was a distress signal that would reach every human vessel within 3 star systems. The message was simple. Mayday! This is Captain Sarah Chun of the cargo vessel Terran Wanderer. We are under attack by Cytherian raiders at coordinates 247156889, human vessel in distress. Any ships receiving this message, please respond. On Earth and the human colonies, there were rules about distress calls. When a human ship was in trouble, other humans came to help. It did not matter if they were military or civilian, friend or stranger. Humans took care of their own. The message went out across space, carried by relay stations and communication satellites. Within minutes, it reached the ears of Captain James Morrison aboard the Terran Defense Force destroyer Retribution. His ship was conducting training exercises 2 star systems away. Captain Morrison was a veteran of the Centauri border wars, where humans had first shown the galaxy that they were not prey animals. He had seen what happened when aliens underestimated human determination. He immediately ordered his ship to jump to hyperspace. Set course for the Wanderer's position, he commanded. Maximum speed, and send word to Colonial Command. Tell them, we have a Code 7 situation. Code 7 meant that humans were under attack by hostile aliens. It was the highest priority emergency signal in the human fleet. Every available ship would be ordered to respond. Back on the Wanderer, the battle was continuing. The Cytherian boarding parties were learning that fighting humans in their own ship was very different from raiding helpless alien traders. Every corridor was a trap. Every room was a potential ambush. The humans seemed to appear from nowhere, strike quickly, and then disappear again. Security Chief Volkov had managed to capture 3 more Cytherian warriors using improvised traps and weapons. He moved through the ship's maintenance passages like a spider in its web, always staying 1 step ahead of the aliens who were trying to hunt him. Engineer Webb had turned the ship's cargo handling systems into weapons. Mechanical arms that normally moved supply containers now grabbed Cytherian warriors and threw them against the walls. Loading ramps opened suddenly under the aliens' feet, dropping them into storage compartments that Webb then sealed shut. The humans were taking casualties, too. Young Tommy Chun, the captain's nephew and a junior engineer, had been caught by a Catherian patrol while trying to repair damaged systems. He was badly wounded and unconscious in the medical bay. 2 other crew members had also been injured, though not seriously. But for every human casualty, the Catherians were losing 3 or 4 warriors. They had expected to find helpless cargo handlers. Instead, they found themselves fighting people who had evolved to survive on the most dangerous world in the galaxy. War Prime Zexler watched his forces being defeated by a handful of humans. His pride and his reputation were being destroyed by creatures he had dismissed as weak prey animals. The warning signs on the human ship were starting to make sense to him, but it was too late to back down now. He had committed his forces to this attack. If he retreated, other Catherian leaders would see him as weak. His own warriors might challenge his leadership. He had to win this battle, no matter what the cost. "Send in the next wave," he ordered. "All remaining warriors board the human ship. Kill everyone you find, no prisoners." More Catherian shuttles launched from the cruiser, carrying fresh warriors, to replace the ones who had been defeated. But they were about to learn the same lesson as their comrades. Humans were much more dangerous than they looked. And in the depths of space, moving faster than light itself, the destroyer Retribution was racing toward the battle. Captain Morrison and his crew were coming to remind the galaxy why human ships carried warning signs. The Catherians had ignored those warnings. Soon they would understand the price of their mistake. 3 hours had passed since the Catherian warriors first boarded the Terran Wanderer. What should have been a quick raid had turned into a nightmare for the alien invaders. The human cargo ship had become a deadly maze where every shadow might hide death. War Prime Zexler stood in his command center, staring at the reports from his boarding parties. Of the 48 warriors he had sent into the human ship, only 23 were still responding to communications. The others were either unconscious, trapped, or worse. "This is impossible," he growled to his second-in-command. "They are just cargo haulers. How can they resist trained Catherian warriors?" But the humans were not just cargo haulers. They were survivors from the most dangerous world in the galaxy, and they had turned their ship into a weapon that used their enemies' weaknesses against them. In the darkened corridors of the Wanderer, Security Chief Anton Volkov moved like a ghost through the maintenance passages. He had grown up hunting wolves in the frozen forests of Siberia, where one mistake could mean death from cold, hunger, or predators. The ship's corridors were much safer than those. Dark woods had been. Anton watched through a small opening as 4 Catherian warriors moved slowly down corridor. 100 to 7. They were being more careful now, having learned that the humans could appear from anywhere. But their caution made them predictable. Anton had spent the last hour setting up a trap. He had loosened the bolts on a heavy air recycling unit in the ceiling above them. When the warriors reached the right position, he would release it. In zero gravity, the massive piece of equipment would hit them like a slow-moving but unstoppable hammer. The Catherians reached the marked spot. Anton pulled the release cord he had rigged. The air unit dropped silently through the zero gravity, striking all 4 warriors and pinning them against the floor. Their armor protected them from serious injury, but they were trapped under the heavy metal unit. 4 more down, Anton whispered into his communicator. "Corridor C7 is clear." In the cargo bay, Maria Santos was having her own success. The ship's cook had turned the storage area into a 3-dimensional hunting ground. She moved between the floating supply containers like a fish swimming through a metal reef. 3 Catherian warriors were trying to search the cargo bay, but they kept getting lost among the hundreds of floating boxes and crates. Maria knew exactly where each container was supposed to be. When the aliens moved them, she could track their location by watching which boxes were out of place. She struck quickly and silently, using tools from the ship's maintenance kit. A wrench to the back of the head, a crowbar behind the knees. Each attack was precise and calculated to disable rather than kill. Maria had learned long ago that in the Amazon jungle, The loudest hunter was usually the one who went home hungry, the first Cytherian warrior went down when Maria dropped a cargo net over him from above. The alien thrashed and struggled, but the more he fought, the more tangled he became. Maria secured the net to a heavy container and left him floating helplessly in the middle of the cargo bay. The second warrior was looking for her behind a stack of supply crates when she came up from below. A quick strike with a metal pipe to his ankle joint, where the armor was weakest, and he was crippled. He could not chase her with a damaged leg, so she simply avoided him while she dealt with his companion. The third warrior was smarter. He stayed in one place and tried to force Maria to come to him, but he had forgotten that in zero gravity, down was just a direction like any other. Maria approached from what he thought was the ceiling, moving along the cargo bays overhead. Rails like a monkey in the forest canopy. By the time he realized where she was, it was too late. Maria dropped onto his back and used a medical sedative she had borrowed from Dr. Park. The warrior struggled for a few seconds, then went limp as the drug took effect. "Cargo bay secure," Maria reported. 3 hostiles captured alive. Dr. Lisa Park was defending the medical section with scientific precision. She had turned the ship's hospital into a research laboratory where the test subjects were Cytherian warriors and the experiment was human survival. The medical bay was now divided into different climate zones. One section was kept at freezing temperature, another was filled with gases that burned alien lungs, and a third had been flooded with water from the ship's emergency tanks. The Cytherians had to cross all 3 zones to reach the medical supplies they were trying to steal. 2 warriors had tried to fight their way through. The first one made it past the frozen section, though the cold slowed him down considerably. But when he reached the gas-filled area, he began coughing and choking. His eyes watered and he could not see clearly. Dr. Park was waiting for him with a surgical laser. She had learned to perform operations in Antarctica, where power failures were common and backup equipment often failed. Working in difficult conditions was nothing new to her. The laser beam cut through the warrior's armor at the shoulder joint, damaging his arm but not killing him. He fell back into the gas-filled section, where the fumes made him too sick to continue fighting. The second warrior tried a different approach. He moved slowly and carefully, using breathing equipment taken from his armor to protect himself from the gas. But when he reached the flooded section, he discovered that Cytherian armor was not designed for swimming. The warrior sank like a stone in the deep water. He thrashed and struggled, but his heavy armor dragged him down. Dr. Park watched from a safe position as he slowly drowned in the artificial lake she had created. At the last moment, she threw him a breathing mask connected to an air hose. She wanted prisoners, not corpses. "Medical section holding," she reported. 2 more hostiles captured. On the bridge, Captain Sarah Chun monitored her crew's progress while keeping watch for new threats. Communications Officer Yuki Tanaka worked beside her, maintaining contact with the outside galaxy and coordinating the ship's defenses. "Captain," Yuki said, "I'm picking up more Cytherian ships approaching our position. 6 vessels, all armed." "They'll be in attack range in 15 minutes?" Sarah nodded grimly. She had expected reinforcements. The Cytherians were not used to having their raids fail, and they would bring overwhelming force to ensure victory, but Sarah had reinforcements of her own coming. Her distress signal had been picked up by human ships across 3 star systems. She could see them on the long-range sensors. Dozens of vessels changing course to respond to her call for help. The closest was the destroyer Retribution, still 10 minutes away. But there were others, cargo ships like her own, mining vessels, exploration ships, even civilian transports. When humans heard that one of their own was in trouble, they came running. "Yuki, open a channel to all approaching human vessels." Sarah ordered. "Channel open, Captain." Sarah spoke clearly into her communicator. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Terran Wanderer. We are under attack by Cytherian raiders who ignored our warning signs and treated us as prey. We have defended ourselves successfully so far, but enemy reinforcements are approaching. Any assistance would be appreciated." The response came immediately from multiple ships. "Wanderer, this is Captain Morrison of the TDF Retribution. We are 2 minutes out. Hold your position. Wanderer, this is the cargo ship New Shanghai. We're armed and ready to help. These raiders picked the wrong humans to mess with. Terran Wanderer, this is the mining vessel Deep Digger. We've got industrial lasers that can cut through anything. Let us know where you need us. More voices joined in, each one representing another human ship racing to help. Sarah felt a surge of pride in her species. This was what made humans different from other races in the galaxy. They did not abandon their own, but the immediate battle was not over yet. More Catherian boarding shuttles were approaching the Wanderer, carrying fresh warriors to replace those who had been defeated. Sarah watched them on her sensors and made a decision. All hands, this is the captain, she announced. We have more boarders incoming. They think they can overwhelm us with numbers. Let's show them why human ships carry warning signs. She activated a special system that most cargo ships did not have, but which all human vessels were required to install after the Proxima Station incident. It was called the Emergency Defense Protocol, and it turned the entire ship into a weapon. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the vessel, dividing it into dozens of separate compartments. Each section could be controlled independently, with its own life support, gravity, and environmental systems. What had been a single ship was now a collection of isolated battle zones. The new Catherian boarding parties broke through the airlocks and found themselves in a completely different situation than their predecessors had faced. Instead of zero gravity and poisoned air, some sections now had triple Earth gravity that crushed the aliens to the floor. Others were filled with superheated steam that burned exposed skin. Still others were kept in complete darkness while invisible. Lasers tracked any movement. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb controlled these systems from his hidden position in the engineering section. He had served aboard human ships for 20 years and knew every trick that desperate crews had developed to survive impossible odds. Section 7 activating high gravity, he announced calmly. Section 12 releasing steam. Section 15 laser grid is active. The Catherians found themselves fighting not just human crew members, but the ship itself. Walls moved to block their progress, floors tilted to throw them off balance. Doors opened and closed randomly, separating groups and isolating individuals. One warrior found himself trapped in a storage room where the walls were slowly moving together. He used his claws to try to stop them, but human engineering was stronger than Catherian muscle. He was forced to surrender and ask for rescue rather than be crushed. Another group discovered that the corridor they were in had become a wind tunnel. Powerful fans designed to move air through the ship during emergencies now created a hurricane that blew the heavy aliens around like leaves in a storm. The humans adapted to each new environment easily. They had grown up on a world where the weather could change from calm to deadly in minutes. They were used to adjusting their tactics to match changing conditions. Tommy Chun, despite his injuries, was helping from the medical bay where Dr. Park had him on a bed connected to monitoring equipment. He was using his engineering knowledge to suggest new ways to modify the ship's systems. Aunt Sarah, he said weakly into his communicator, if you reverse the airflow in sections 9 and 10, you can create a pressure difference that will push the aliens towards section 11. Then Marcus can flood that area with sleeping gas from the emergency medical supplies. Good thinking, Tommy, Sarah replied. Marcus, did you hear that? Already on it, Captain, the engineer responded. Pressure differential established. Gas release in 30 seconds. The plan worked perfectly. 6 Catherian warriors were pushed by the air pressure into section 11, where they breathed sleeping gas and collapsed unconscious. They would wake up in a few hours with headaches, but they would be alive and in human custody. War Prime Zexther watched in growing fury as his second wave of warriors was defeated just as easily as the first. His sensors showed that nearly all of his boarding parties were now either captured, unconscious, or calling for retreat. How's this possible? He demanded. They are just humans. Small, weak creatures. His second-in-command looked nervous. War Prime, perhaps we should consider withdrawing. The other ships in our fleet are reporting strange sensor readings. It appears that many human vessels are approaching our position. Zexler looked at his long-range sensors and felt his blood turn cold. Dozens of ships were converging on the battle site. They were not military vessels, but they were all human, and they were all armed with the industrial equipment that could be turned into weapons. But more frightening than the ships was what they represented. Zexler was looking at an entire species that refused to abandon its own members. When one human was threatened, all humans became dangerous. "We cannot retreat now," Zexler said, though his voice was less confident than before. "If we run from a single cargo ship, we will be laughed at throughout the galaxy. We attack the human vessel directly. Destroy it completely." It was the worst decision he could have made. By choosing to escalate the conflict instead of withdrawing, Zexler had just declared war on every human in the galaxy. And in the deep void of space, the destroyer Retribution dropped out of hyperspace and immediately locked weapons on the Cytherian fleet. Captain Morrison's voice came over the emergency channels, cold and professional. "Cytherian vessels, this is Captain James Morrison of the Terran Defense Force. You are in violation of the Galactic Commerce Treaty and multiple interstellar laws. You have attacked a human civilian vessel in neutral space. Stand down immediately and prepare to surrender or face the consequences." Zexler made his final mistake. Instead of surrendering, he opened fire on the destroyer. The real battle was about to begin. The first shot from War Prime Zexler-S flagship hit the destroyer, Retribution's shields in a burst of brilliant energy. The human warship shook slightly, but its defenses held firm. Captain James Morrison had expected this. He had been in enough battles to know that some enemies only understood violence. "All stations, battle alert," Morrison announced calmly. "Target the Cytherian flagship's weapon systems. Disable. Do not destroy. We want prisoners for the War Crimes Tribunal." The Retribution moved with deadly grace through space. Unlike the bulky Cytherian ships that relied on heavy armor and massive weapons, the human destroyer was built for speed and precision. It had been designed by engineers who studied the movements of sharks and eagles, predators that killed with efficiency rather than brute force. The destroyer's weapons fired in carefully aimed bursts. Each shot hit exactly where Morrison intended: weapon ports, sensor arrays, engine components. The Cytherian flagship was being taken apart piece by piece while its crew remained mostly unharmed. "Impossible," Zexler roared as his ship's main guns went offline. "One small human ship cannot defeat the might of the Cytherian 7th Fleet." But it was not just one ship anymore. As the battle raged, more human vessels continued to drop out of hyperspace around the combat zone. They came from mining colonies, trading posts, exploration missions, and patrol routes across 3 star systems. The cargo ship New Shanghai arrived first, her captain immediately opening fire on the Cytherian vessels with modified industrial lasers. The mining ship Deep Digger followed, using rock-cutting equipment that could slice through alien armor like paper. A passenger transport called the Peaceful Journey launched a spread of emergency flares that blinded Cytherian sensors. Each ship that arrived was technically civilian, but humans did not make a sharp distinction between military and non-military when their people were threatened. Every human vessel carried weapons of some kind, even if they were disguised as mining tools or construction equipment. Captain Morrison tried to maintain some order as more ships joined the battle. "All human vessels, this is Captain Morrison of the TDF Retribution. Form up on my position and follow my targeting commands. We are here to rescue the Terran Wanderer and capture these pirates, not to start a war." But privately, Morrison knew that a war had already started the moment the Cytherians ignored the warning signs on a human ship. The galaxy was about to learn again why those warnings existed. The Cytherian fleet found itself surrounded by an ever-growing swarm of human ships. What had started as a simple raid on a cargo vessel had become a battle against an entire species that refused to let its members be harmed. On the Wanderer, Captain Sarah Chun watched the space battle through her damaged sensors while her crew continued to fight off the remaining boarders. The Cytherians trapped inside her ship were now calling desperately for evacuation, but their fleet was too busy trying to survive to rescue them. "Captain," Communications Officer Yuki reported, "I'm receiving surrender requests from several Catherian boarding parties. They want to give up and be taken prisoner." Sarah considered this. Her crew had fought hard to defend their ship, and several of them were injured. Part of her wanted to make the aliens pay for attacking innocent humans. But she was still a cargo ship captain, not a military commander. Accept their surrender, she decided, but keep them under guard. "Security Chief Volkov, can you handle prisoner management?" Anton Volkov's voice came over the communicator from somewhere deep in the ship. "Already on it, Captain. I've got holding areas set up in Cargo Bay 3. The aliens will be secure but comfortable until we can turn them over to proper authorities." In space, the battle was turning decisively against the Catherians. Their ships were built for raiding poorly defended alien settlements, not for fighting a coordinated fleet of angry humans. The human vessels moved together like a pack of wolves, each ship covering the others while they took turns attacking. War Prime Zexler S flagship was nearly dead in space. Most of its weapons were destroyed, its engines were damaged, and several hull breaches were leaking atmosphere. The other ships in his fleet were in similar condition or worse. "War Prime," his second-in-command said urgently, "we must retreat. The humans have us outnumbered and outgunned. If we stay, they will destroy." "US all?" Zexler looked around his damaged command center. Half of his crew was unconscious or wounded. Smoke filled the air, and emergency lights cast eerie shadows on the walls. For the first time in his career, he was facing defeat, but retreating would mean admitting that the mighty Catherian 7th Fleet had been beaten by a handful of human cargo haulers. His reputation would be destroyed. Other Catherian commanders would challenge his leadership. His own warriors might refuse to follow him. "We do not retreat," he growled. "Signal the reserve fleet. Tell them we need immediate reinforcements." "War Prime, the reserve fleet is 6 hours away. We will not survive that long against these humans." Zexler's yellow eyes blazed with fury and desperation. "Then we take as many of them with us as possible. All ships, ramming speed. Target the largest human vessels. If we must die, we die as warriors." It was the decision of a leader who had lost all sense of strategy. Zexler was about to throw away the lives of his remaining warriors in a useless gesture of pride. Captain Morrison detected the change in Catherian ship movements immediately. "All vessels, enemy ships are moving to ramming positions. Scatter and maintain distance. Do not let them get close enough for suicide attacks." But one of the human ships was too slow to escape. The passenger transport Peaceful Journey had been damaged in the earlier fighting and could not accelerate quickly enough. A crippled Catherian cruiser was bearing down on her with obvious intent to ram. The Peaceful Journey carried 300 human colonists, including families with children. If she was destroyed, it would be a massacre of innocents. Captain Morrison made a split-second decision. He ordered the Retribution to intercept the Catherian cruiser, putting his own ship directly in the path of the alien vessel. "All hands, brace for impact," Morrison announced. "Engineering, transfer all power to forward shields. We're going to take a hit." The two ships collided in a spectacular explosion of metal and energy. The Catherian cruiser crumpled against the Retribution's reinforced hull like a tin can hitting a brick wall. The human destroyer shook violently but remained intact. Her shields absorbed most of the impact, and her armor plating held firm. The Catherian cruiser was not so lucky. The ramming attempt had torn her apart, leaving only twisted wreckage floating in space. Her crew was dead or dying in the vacuum. "Peaceful Journey, this is Morrison. Are you clear?" "We're clear, Captain." "Thank you for saving our families," Morrison nodded grimly. The cost of this battle was rising, and he knew it would go higher before the end. But that was what humans did for each other. They paid the price. To protect their own, across the battle zone, other human ships were making similar sacrifices. The mining vessel Deep Digger positioned herself between a damaged cargo ship and attacking Catherian fighters. The exploration ship Far Horizon used her own hull as a shield to protect a medical transport carrying wounded civilians. This was what the galaxy feared most about humanity. They did not fight as individuals seeking personal glory. They fought as a united species, each member willing to die for the others. It made them almost impossible to defeat because killing one human only made the others more determined to win. War Prime, Zexther watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by opponents who should have been easy prey. His warriors were brave and strong, but they were fighting for their own honor and reputation. The humans were fighting for their families, their friends, and their species. It was not a fair contest. War Prime, his communication officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from the human flagship. Put it on screen, Zexther ordered. Captain Morrison's face appeared on the view screen. He looked calm and professional, but there was steel in his eyes. War Prime Zexther, this is your final warning. Surrender now, and your surviving crew will be treated according to galactic law. Continue fighting, and we will destroy every ship in your fleet. Zexther laughed bitterly. You think you have won, human? You have only seen a small part of Catherian power. When our main fleet arrives, you will learn what real warriors can do. Morrison's expression did not change. War Prime, I need to explain something to you. You attacked a human civilian vessel. That makes this a Code 7 emergency. Do you know what that means? Zexther did not answer, but he felt a cold fear growing in his chest. Code 7 means that every human military unit within 10 star systems has been ordered to respond to this location. The Colonial Defense Fleet is coming. The Patrol Service is coming. The Deep Space Survey Corps is coming. In 6 hours, there will be over 100 human warships in this system. Morrison leaned forward slightly. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that you ignored the warning signs on a human ship. That means you treated us as prey instead of equals. When word of this spreads, every human in the galaxy will know that the Catherian Empire considers us to be animals for hunting. The fear in Zexther's chest turned to ice-cold terror. He was beginning to understand what he had started. You see, Morrison continued, humans have a saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. We put warning signs on our ships because we want peace. We try to avoid conflict whenever possible. But when someone ignores those warnings and attacks us anyway, they discover why we needed the warnings in the first place. Morrison gestured to the space around them, where dozens of human ships had gathered in response to a single distress call. This is just the beginning, War Prime. You started a war with the wrong species. We tried to warn you. On the Terran Wanderer, Captain Sarah Chun received a priority message from Colonial Command. It was brief and to the point. Captain Chun, the Terran Senate has declared the attack on your vessel to be an act of war against the human species. All human vessels are authorized to use any means necessary to defend themselves and other humans from Catherian aggression. Additional military support is en route. Sarah looked around her damaged bridge at her crew. They had started this day as simple cargo haulers, carrying supplies between the colonies. Now they were at the center of what might become the next interstellar war. Captain, Yuki said quietly, I'm detecting more ships dropping out of hyperspace. A lot more ships? Sarah looked at her sensors and felt her breath catch. The new arrivals were not human vessels. They were from a dozen different alien species. Zephyrian traders, Altarian merchants, Centauran explorers, even a few ships from species she did not recognize. All of them were broadcasting the same message: we stand with humanity. The attack on the Terran Wanderer violates interstellar law and threatens the safety of all civilian vessels. The Catherian Empire must be held accountable. The galaxy was choosing sides, and they were choosing to support the humans who had tried to warn their attackers before defending themselves. War Prime Zexther stared at his sensors in growing horror. What had started as a simple raid on a cargo ship had become a gathering of the largest space fleet in galactic history. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species were converging on his location, all united by their anger at Catherian aggression. His communication officer's voice was shaking. War Prime, we're receiving surrender demands from over 50 different vessels. They want us to turn ourselves over for trial as war criminals. Zexter closed his eyes. He had made the biggest mistake in Catherian military history. He had ignored the warnings on a human ship and triggered a response that might destroy his entire empire. The hunt was over. The Catherians had learned too late that humans were not prey animals. They were apex predators who had been trying to warn everyone else to stay away. The surrender came at dawn, ship time. War Prime Zexter sat in his damaged command chair, staring at the view screen that showed hundreds of ships surrounding his defeated fleet. Human vessels, alien traders, military escorts, and civilian craft had all gathered to witness the end of his career and possibly his empire. Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication system, calm and professional as always. War Prime, your ships are surrounded and outnumbered 50-1. Your weapons are destroyed, your engines are damaged, and your crew is dying from hull breaches. Will you surrender, or do we need to finish what you started? Zexter looked around his command center. Most of his officers were wounded or unconscious. The air was thick with smoke from damaged systems. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls, making everything look like it was covered in blood. I surrender, he said quietly. The words tasted like poison in his mouth, but he had no choice. My fleet surrenders to the human forces. Acknowledged, Morrison replied. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. Within an hour, human marines had taken control of every surviving Catherian ship. The aliens who had thought they were hunting cargo haulers now found themselves prisoners of the very species they had dismissed as weak prey. On the Terran Wanderer, Captain Sarah Chun finally allowed herself to relax. Her ship was badly damaged, several of her crew were injured, and the cargo hold was full of Catherian prisoners. But they were alive, and help had arrived. Dr. Lisa Park worked in the medical bay, treating both human and alien wounded. She moved between the beds with professional efficiency, her hands steady despite the exhaustion she felt. The Catherians looked at her with something like awe, unable to understand how the small human woman could be so calm after such a violent battle. Captain, Communications Officer Yuki called from her station. I'm receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's from the Terran Senate. Sarah straightened her uniform and prepared to speak with the most powerful human government in the galaxy. The transmission came through clearly despite the damage to the ship's communication systems. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Senator Maria Vasquez, the current president of the Senate. She was an older woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen decades of interstellar politics. Captain Chun, Senator Vasquez said, on behalf of the Terran Senate and the human species, I want to thank you and your crew for your courage in defending your ship. Your actions today have reminded the galaxy why human vessels carry warning signs. Thank you, Senator, Sarah replied. We were just doing our job. No, Captain. You were doing much more than that. You were upholding the principles that make us human. When faced with superior numbers and firepower, you refused to surrender. When offered the chance to strike back in anger, you chose to capture rather than kill. You have shown the galaxy who we really are. Senator Vasquez leaned forward slightly. The Senate has voted unanimously to declare the attack on your vessel an act of war against humanity. However, we are also prepared to negotiate a peaceful resolution to this crisis, provided the Catherian Empire accepts full responsibility for their actions and agrees to make proper compensation. Sarah nodded. She was a cargo ship captain, not a diplomat, but she understood the importance of what was happening. This incident would change the relationship between humans and aliens throughout the galaxy. 3 months later, the consequences of the battle were still spreading across known space. The Catherian crisis, as historians would later call it, became a turning point in galactic politics. The Catherian Empire, faced with overwhelming evidence of their unprovoked attack on a civilian vessel, was forced to sign the Treaty of New Geneva. The agreement required them to pay massive compensation to the victims, to formally recognize the rights of all civilian ships in neutral space, and to submit to regular inspections by the Galactic Peace Corps, more importantly the treaty included a clause that became known as the Human Warning Protocol. Any ship bearing the warning signs that human vessels carried was to be treated with extreme caution by all signatories. Attacking such a vessel would be considered an act of war against the entire human species. The galaxy learned that the warnings on human ships were not empty threats or primitive attempts at intimidation. They were genuine efforts to prevent exactly the kind of disaster that had befallen the Catherian 7th Fleet. Captain Sarah Chun found herself famous throughout human space and beyond. News reporters from dozens of species interviewed her about the battle, all asking the same question: why had humans responded so strongly to what was essentially a piracy incident? Her answer became legendary. Sitting in her repaired captain's chair aboard the newly rebuilt Terran Wanderer, she looked directly into the camera and spoke with quiet conviction. You want to know why we put warning signs on our ships? Because we're trying to protect you from us. We're a species that evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We learned to work together because alone we die. When you attack one human, you're not fighting one person. You're fighting the entire species. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We tried to warn you. The signs aren't there to scare you. They're there to save you. Because once you cross that line, once you decide that humans are prey instead of partners, you don't get to go back. You ignored the warnings, and now you know why they exist. The interview was broadcast across the galaxy and became required viewing in alien military academies. It perfectly captured the human philosophy of peace through strength that so many species found difficult to understand. War Prime Zexther, stripped of his rank and serving a life sentence in a galactic prison, watched that interview from his cell. He had spent months trying to understand how his planned raid had turned into a disaster that nearly destroyed his empire. Now he finally understood. The humans had not been bluffing with their warning signs. They had been offering mercy to anyone smart enough to heed the warnings. He had chosen to ignore that mercy and had paid the ultimate price for his arrogance. The changes went beyond politics and military treaties. Throughout the galaxy, alien crews began studying human tactics and technology. They wanted to understand how a single cargo ship had held off an entire raiding fleet, and how a few dozen civilian vessels had defeated a military force that had terrorized multiple star systems. What they discovered was that human ships were not just transportation devices. They were survival systems designed to keep their crews alive in the most hostile environments imaginable. Every human vessel was built with the assumption that it might need to become a fortress, a weapon, or a lifeboat at a moment's notice. The artificial intelligence systems on human ships were programmed, not just to manage navigation and life support, but to help their crews survive in impossible situations. The very structure of human vessels was designed to be modular and adaptable, allowing them to be reconfigured for different threats. Most importantly, human crews were trained from childhood to work together under extreme stress. They practiced emergency procedures until they became instinctive. They studied the weaknesses of other species not out of malice, but out of the practical need to survive in a galaxy where they were often outnumbered. Other species began adopting human training methods and equipment designs. The galaxy became a safer place as civilian ships became harder targets for pirates and raiders, but the most significant change was in how aliens viewed humanity itself. Before the Catherian crisis, many species saw humans as aggressive newcomers who had joined galactic civilization through military conquest. After the crisis, they understood that human aggression was purely defensive. Humans did not want to conquer other species. They wanted to be left alone to trade, explore, and build their colonies in peace. But they were absolutely ruthless in defending themselves and each other when threatened. The warning signs on human ships became symbols of this philosophy. They represented a species that preferred peace, but was always prepared for war. They were reminders that humans had evolved to survive on the most dangerous world in the galaxy, and that this evolutionary heritage made them formidable opponents when cornered. New warning signs appeared on human vessels. Now written in 43 different languages instead of the original 17. The messages were the same, but they carried new weight. Every alien captain in the galaxy knew the story of War Prime Zexter and his fleet. The signs were no longer just legal requirements. They were promises. Captain Sarah Chun continued to fly cargo runs between the colonies, but her ship was never bothered by pirates again. The Terran Wanderer had become famous as the vessel that proved human warnings were not empty threats. Her crew stayed together, bound by the shared experience of their impossible victory. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb designed new defensive systems that were adopted by the entire human merchant fleet. Dr. Lisa Park wrote medical textbooks on treating alien injuries, knowledge that proved valuable in the peacekeeping missions that followed. Security Chief Anton Volkov became an instructor at the Colonial Defense Academy, teaching young officers how to turn civilian vessels into military assets. Communications Officer Yuki Tanaka joined the diplomatic corps using her experience to help negotiate new treaties with alien governments. Even young Tommy Chun, recovered from his injuries, became a symbol of human resilience. He went on to become one of the leading engineers in the colonies, designing ships that could survive anything the galaxy might throw at them. But perhaps the most important change was in the relationship between humans and their alien neighbors. The Catherian crisis had shown that humans were willing to fight fiercely when attacked, but also that they preferred to capture rather than kill their enemies and to negotiate rather than conquer. Many alien species that had been suspicious of human expansion began to see them as potential allies rather than threats. Trade agreements were signed, scientific exchanges were established, and joint exploration missions were launched. The galaxy learned that humans were not the monsters that some species had feared. They were survivors who had been shaped by a dangerous world, but who used their strength to protect rather than oppress. The warning signs remained on every human ship, but their meaning had evolved. They were no longer just warnings about what humans might do if attacked. They were promises about what humans would do to protect not just their own species, but any peaceful travelers who respected the laws of civilization. The message was clear to anyone who took time to read and understand it. Humans had tried to warn their enemies before defending themselves. They had offered mercy before using force. They had chosen peace over war whenever possible. But when someone ignored those warnings and chose violence anyway, they learned why the signs existed. They discovered that humans were the apex predators of the galaxy, and that they had been trying to protect everyone else from that terrible truth. The price of ignoring human warnings was always higher than anyone expected to pay. War Prime Zexter had learned this lesson too late, and his empire had nearly paid the ultimate price for his ignorance. The galaxy would not make that mistake. Again, the warnings were clear, and now everyone understood exactly what they meant. Humanity had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. They had learned to survive by working together, by never giving up, and by being absolutely ruthless when their survival was threatened. The signs on their ships were not boasts or threats. They were acts of mercy, offering fair warning to anyone who might be tempted to test human resolve. Smart beings heeded those warnings and lived to trade another day. Foolish ones learned why the warnings existed, usually too late to save themselves. The choice, as always, belonged to those who encountered the signs. Humans had done their part by providing fair warning. What happened next was up to everyone else.